But I said to David, I was like, was it 1995? Was it that? Here we go. Oh, no. Hey, everyone. Andrew here, Melbourne Superman, super fit cosplay. And I have finally seen Superman, the Christopher Reeve story. And I gotta tell you, I was blown away. It was intense. So stay tuned to the end of the video because you'll actually get to see some of my live reactions. My buddy David, who I went to go and see it with, took some sneaky footage of me while I was watching it. And you can sort of see how focused I was on the story. It was just so intense. So I'm going to talk a little bit about it today. So obviously there's going to be spoilers here. So if you haven't seen it, probably go and see it. If you don't know if you're going to be able to see it, then stick around for a story. But, I mean, it's not spoilers in the sense that it's going to spoil anything, like a major plot twist or anything. I mean, a lot of the things, you know, we know if we've read his books or if we followed his life. So, obviously, Christopher Reeve was, you know, a humanitarian to start with. You know, he was very much fighting for human rights, even before the accident. So, you know, there were actually, it was an interesting point of it, and I'm probably going to jump around a little bit here. This might be a little bit of a longer one, but there was an interesting thing that I didn't know, that there were members of the disability, the community with disability, that were not happy with what Chris was doing. Especially, I don't know how many of you remember, I know I remember where I was and when I saw it, the commercial for, you know, stem cell research, and it showed Christopher Reeve actually walking due to the research. And it was obviously all computer generated, but there was a big resurgence of people who did not actually appreciate that in the disability community, which I didn't know. They thought it was a bit of a slap in the face, a little bit of this, so he got some flack for it, which was really interesting. But again, I'm jumping around now. So obviously, the thing that jumped out at me for this thing, they had this image, this constant image of Christopher Reeve as like a statue. And what was interesting was whenever they talked about something that was, like, that had affected him, the statue sort of changed. So the statue was like floating around in this universe-type environment, like clouds and space and planets and stars. And so, for example, when he talked about, where they're talking about how he broke his neck, it cut to the statue, and the part of where the fracture was sort of changed in the sense that it cracked and green light came through it as it was cracking. When they were talking about his spinal injury, the statue started forming green crystals on his spine. Obviously, it's a reference to kryptonite. And it was just a really interesting way to do it, and it kept cutting back to this. And the music was fantastic, and there were almost signs of, I mean, obviously they played the John Williams score at points, but there were almost signs in this score that it sounded like it was going to cut into parts of the John Williams score. Like there was this one recurring theme. It just started, da-na. It almost sounded like it wanted to do da-na, da-na-na-na-na, da-na-na-na-na. There it is. Which was interesting. It never did. Oh my god, twice in 5 seconds. But I think the use of the music was fantastic. So obviously, okay, so jumping around. All right. So it starts off with talking about, you know, Christopher Reeve, obviously as an actor, as a stage actor, and it went into discussions about, you know, when he got the call to go and read for Superman in London, and he was doing a play with Jeff Daniels and William Hurt, and he basically got this call, and Jeff Daniels was talking about it, and he was just like, we are theater actors, and Chris comes in with the news that he's got a film test for a movie in London, and we were just like, and so they asked him what it was, and Chris said Superman, and William Hurt was just like, don't do it, you're selling yourself out, you're gonna sell yourself out. And it was really interesting. It was really interesting to hear that side of things because, you know, as a stage performer myself, it's funny that it's like there are some stage performers that really hold that aspect of it in such high regard that if you do something campy like that, or what can be perceived as campy, you're kind of selling yourself out. I don't think it turned out that way. I think later on in the series, unfortunately, the movie sold Chris out, if that makes sense. But it was just a really interesting. It was a really interesting thing. So obviously he went, obviously, and they cut to Dick Donner just talking a little bit about it, and you can find that footage. There's that footage in some of the documentaries, so it's not new footage or anything. But it was just interesting to weave that footage into this, where Dick Donner was just talking about this 175-pound kid, or however much he weighed, and how he was sweating through the suit and reading for all these people as Lois Lane. Susan Sarandon came on and was speaking about it, who was a friend of his. And so, they had certain actors and people that were constantly talking, like obviously Will and Matt Reeve, his daughter. Why can't I remember her name right now? It'll come to me. Obviously, there were points of people that were talking that had disabilities. But yeah, so watching him become Superman, he talked about David Prowse and how he was training, and just watching how it all unfolded. And one of the interesting things that I didn't know either, maybe I did, I read his books, I can't remember though, I read them so long ago, I read them after he died, right after he died. The relationship that he had with his father, which was always sort of strained, and it was always kind of like that, oh, you got good grades? Great. Oh, you did well here? Oh, you could do better. So it was an interesting thing when he told his father that he got the role of Superman. Apparently he was famously disappointed. He thought he got it confused with Man and Superman, the famous play. And when he realized that it was actually Superman, he was kind of disappointed, apparently. So he had a strained relationship with his father, and it did go into that a little bit, which was interesting. They went into a lot of relationships with him in terms of who he spoke to and who he, had relationships with. They went deeply into his relationship with Gay, his first partner, basically where he met her at Pinewood in the cafe or the cafeteria, and it was a bit of an endearing story. It was kind of classic, where he knocked her, he said, "Oh, hello," and she said, "Oh, well, you should say sorry," and then they met again a couple days later, and they just hit it off. Obviously that didn't last, but for what it seemed like they were very happy, and just things led to another, and Chris decided that it wasn't what he wanted anymore, and so he moved away, and he left, and you could see that Gay was still, because when she was talking about it, she was talking about him leaving, and she teared up, and you could tell that it wasn't sort of what she wanted, which is, I'm kind of getting teary just thinking about it. It's kind of sad. But, well, it's very sad, I guess, actually. So they went into that. And I'm just, like, watching this whole time. And it's like, when you watch a documentary, there are points where you're just like, yeah, okay, this is bathroom break time. Or, okay, this is whatever this is. Not once did I feel like that during this. I was, like, just glued to that screen. Both David and I were glued to that screen. If you've seen it, how did you react to it? Did you like it? Comment down below. I'd love to know your thoughts on it. And you'll see my reaction to it and how focused I was at the end of the video. But so it went on and talked about his career afterward and how it was hard for him to be taken seriously as an actor. There was a point where he went and did a play again with Jeff Daniels, where he had to kiss Jeff Daniels. He played a gay character, and someone in the audience said, "Say it ain't so, Superman." So it was very hard for him to get rid of that stigma. And even when he made other movies, like Somewhere in Time, for example, like, he was never really taken seriously. But all the roles, and it was really interesting when you really think about it, all of his roles that he had done outside of Superman were so far away from Superman, so you could see how much he was trying to distance himself from that. And he even said numerous times, there were quotes from him saying, "Look, I'm not Superman. I'm not that character. I'm not a hero. I never was. I never will be. I'm just a guy. I'm just a guy playing a character to the best of my ability." And it was interesting. It was interesting that he saw himself that way, but he never, or maybe he did, I don't know, but he became such a hero because of what he did in terms of disability progress. I mean, Barack Obama signed the Christopher and Dana Reeve bill to further paralysis research and disability research. So it's like he paved the way for a lot of what's happening today. So he absolutely was a hero. And so, yeah, so it went on, and, you know, they started talking more and more about it. And obviously, you know, finally they get into the accident. And I didn't realize it was so early. Like, I was obviously alive when it happened. But I said to David, I was like, was it 1995? Was it that? Here we go. Oh, no. It was an intense documentary, but I said to David, was it 1995 that this happened? Was it that long ago? Yeah. So they get into it, and they start talking about it, and it was just... It was very interesting. It was like, they were saying, like, 1 inch one way and he would have died. 1 inch the other way and it would have just been an embarrassing fall. So, the way that he fell, the way that he broke his spine, it was instant paralysis. And it didn't look good. I mean, those of you who are alive, you probably remember. The community of people just came out and were just like, so supportive of this man who had been that figure that made the world believe a man could fly. And he had now been broken down into what it is that he became. And you know, it was interesting. And this is where part of the disability community did come out and say, we don't really agree with what he's doing, trying to find a cure, because that means that something's wrong. Is something wrong? I mean, it's a gray area. No, is there something wrong with you as a person? No, but is there something wrong with your body? Yeah. Yeah, so why not try to fix it? Unless you're happy that way. Like, you know, a lot of people believe that things happen for a reason. And, you know, you can either put your head in the sand and let it happen to you, or you can accept that it's happening, and you can go with it and do something about it. Or, the other type of person is the person that thinks it's all random, and whatever's going to happen is going to happen. It's all molecules bouncing off, and whatever happens, happens. I don't know. What type of person are you? Do you think it's all random, or do you think everything happens for a reason? I personally think that there's a bit of both. That everything happens for a reason, but some things are random, and you can make the most or the least out of them. So, it started talking about his struggle and how they coped. Like, he needed 24-hour care, and, you know, they were fortunate. And he never once took it for granted, it feels, because he said many times, I mean, obviously this is all footage of him before he died, that he was lucky and luckier than most who had gotten into this scenario where he was like, you know, we have enough money to take care of me. We have enough money to do research. It's going to run out, but right now I'm lucky. And they kept cutting back and forth to this scene from a movie that he had done where he was quadriplegic. And I didn't realize that because I'd never seen this movie. And I said to David, is this real footage of him? Because it feels acted. And if it's acted, and the footage feels really good. And when he was dying or crippled or quadriplegic in bed, nobody would have gotten this footage like this. I was like, is this AI? Like, what is this? He's like, no, that's real footage. And it was from a movie that he had done. But they kept cutting back and forth to sort of accent what was being spoken about on screen, which was really interesting. They went back and forth between him and Superman to accent what was going on. Like, at one point, there was this beautiful scene where he was addressing, I think it was Congress, and it kept cutting back. And he was at this point in the wheelchair. And he was addressing Congress about how America needs to take care of its people and do more research here. And it kept cutting back and forth between that and Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, when he's addressing the United Nations. And it was just really powerful. And it just... Oh, here we go again. It was just very intense. So they went through that. They went through everything that he wanted to do, everything that he was trying to fight for, and it seemed like he never once wanted to give up. I mean, I'm sure at points there were dark times. I'm sure we're not seeing that. But as a family, they were all so happy. And obviously at this point, he had already met Dana. You know, that was a good story. Like, he met her, she was singing, and he was just, right away, they were just so happy. And this obviously before the accident. Sorry, I'm jumping around so much because as things come into my head, I wanted to take notes, but at the same time, I didn't want to take notes because I wanted to focus on it. But the love that they had, and another interesting thing, jumping around again, when he was with Gay, he said he didn't believe in marriage. He believed that marriage was something that if you did it, you would sort of stop trying at the relationship. And people would look at that and say, oh, that's just an excuse to not get married. But you know what? People feel the way that they feel. They're going to live their life. You live yours. When he got together with Dana, that's when he said, you know what? Marriage isn't a way to stop trying. It's a celebration. It's a reward. It's something that you should be able to have. There's a word I'm looking for. There's always a word that I'm looking for that I can never find. It's a word that he said. What was it? It's like an honor. No, it's a privilege. Maybe it was a privilege. No, I can't remember. It doesn't matter. But it was interesting to see how that relationship changed him. Am I still recording? Yes, I am. So yeah, this whole time after he had the accident, it seemed like the family was happy. He was keeping the kids happy as much as he could. And you know, this whole time we're talking to his kids and they're explaining everything, and it gets to that point where they're talking about basically the day that he died and the call that they got. And, you know, they saw him and he was like fine, sort of, and then he wasn't. I mean, there was talk of an infection, but it was really interesting. At one point, someone said just like, it could have been a bed sore, could have been an infection, but really the body just gave out. And they all accepted that. They're like, we all knew it was coming. We didn't know when. We knew it was something that was going to happen. And it was just so sad to watch how they reacted. It was just like, they were just like, he was gone. And the world just got sad. And they mourned for Superman. And as much as he didn't maybe want to be associated with that later on, it's a hard one. It's like, are we doing him a disservice from comparing him to that and mostly that? Or is it something to be celebrated because of how many lives he touched? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. But it was so sad. And then, of course, 18 months later, Dana went stage 4 lung cancer, diagnosed, never smoked, healthy, but somehow just got her. So these kids who are half siblings, they lost both their parents, step-parents, in the span of 18 months. But you know what? They then survived. They persevered, and they carried on this legacy, the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation, which I'll put a link to in the profile description. But it was just so wow. And it was, yeah, just seeing everything that this family went through, what they did for the community. I mean, there's so much more that I'm talking about right now, but this is the things that are popping into my head the day after, and I just wanted to come on and talk about it. But it was very good. It was very worth seeing on the big screen if you can. I'm sure it'll be out on the small screen soon, but if you can go and see it, It's so worth it. It's so worth it. It's just a beautifully tragic story, and I learned things that I didn't know. So that's all I have to say about that. The Superman Christopher Reeve story. 10 out of 10, beautiful documentary. Can't wait for you all to see it. So look, If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, subscribe, hit the notifications bell, ding ding. Thank you for watching so much, and I will catch